There's still a lot of debate over when to mark the true beginning of the early medieval Curonian kingdom, because the written records that begin to appear in the first half of the 800s paint a picture of a nominal monarchy. A kingdom by many respects in name only. Particularly under the reign of Naula, the first monarch for whom we have any reasonably good sources, the situation in Curonia was still largely one of local, tribal strongmen operating largely autonomously. The failure of the burgeoning state to implement administrative functions like keeping the law and regulating commerce gave bandits and smugglers a free hand across the nearly anarchic hinterlands. Raids were common, both from the steppes and the seafarers of Scandinavia, raids that often went unanswered by a disorganized and slow-moving royal army. Royal order was only really respected in a fortified corridor along the coast from Grobno, wrapping around the Gulf of Riga and following the Daugava River about 150 miles inland to Daugavpils. Here, strong hill forts funded with the help of Dievturi temple money were staffed by defenders loyal to the crown, and the peace could be kept. But even they could not be spared from the dynastic contests that were starting to constantly rile up the realm. The semi-legendary rulers known as the Children of Akko seemed to feel no great kinship to one another on behalf of their legendary patriarch, with over a dozen of them proclaiming the right to rule in the years between 800 and 850. Whether they were truly all related, or merely ambitious warlords looking to trade on Akko's name to gain legitimacy, is still a hotly debated subject. Queen Naula was the first of these to win the support of the important tribal elders, but was forced to fend off 2 claimant wars and a faction of unruly vassals before finally being assassinated by her niece Zigna, who would one day become queen herself. And so religious fundamentalists insist that Akko was a flesh-and-blood man and the founder of the kingdom, and certainly it's hard to deny that some quite unusual force led to the rapid consolidation of the Baltic region during his supposed lifetime, as we've discussed previously. And other, more secular sources sometimes cite Naula as the founder of the early kingdom, as she is the first ruler we have good sources for. But the sorry state of the realm during her reign leads others to debate whether she was truly a queen in practice over all the lands she claimed to rule in name and title. Very few make a case for Naula's older sister, who ruled very briefly after her assassination, Queen Ruta. As her reign was short and uneventful, not much was made of it in the primary sources at the time, though in literature she is often made another victim of Zigna's murderous impulses, which makes some amount of dramatic sense. The only support for this seems to come from biased accounts, and it's believed much more likely that Ruta died of wounds sustained in battle. Now, Queen Zigna is a very interesting figure, and another commonly cited as the first true monarch of the early medieval Curonian kingdom. Under her rule, there was a vast expansion of infrastructure and culling of bandits and smugglers to bring real, lasting order to the realm. Favorable accounts tell of Zigna chasing down ruffians and despoilers on horseback, and righteously slaying them with her own hand. Those less fond of her tend to characterize her rule as one of tyranny, having her lead a foul-smelling band of heavy-handed tax collectors to demand unjust payments from the folk of the countryside and putting to death of folk heroes. Whatever the case, we see a sharp increase in centralization and royal bureaucracy, as well as a decrease in outlaw activity during her reign. Her husband, Lonkogveni, also aided in penning many of the earliest written legal codes to be used in the kingdom. The circumstances of Zigna's own death are somewhat mysterious, and there are circumstantial reasons to suspect that she was assassinated herself, but no evidence has yet been uncovered to confirm nor deny this. After the 3 semi-legendary queens, we have 3 semi-legendary kings, 2 of whom have been credited at some point or another with being the first true monarch of the early medieval kingdom. King Sargon continued Zigna's policy of expanding and strengthening royal authority, even dying in the effort, in battle against the Volhynian raiders of Novogrodek, who had long plagued the area around Minsk and Vilnius with their marauding. He was succeeded by King Pukik, who ruled for a mere 9 months before succumbing to an infected wound. Due to its great brevity, not much is told of his reign, and he is generally not cited as a founder of the kingdom. His successor, King Tridenis the Bear, however, is the subject of much lore and fanfare. The last of the semi-legendary Curonian monarchs, he was notable for never fathering any children. One of his opponents infamously wrote that his genitals were torn off by a bear when he tried to seduce it, but this very fanciful story isn't substantiated by evidence. Another famous story about him that is, however, is a revenge tale in which he slew Chief Manvidus, often called the Terrible, for burning his twin sister at the stake. His reign was prosperous, and true to tradition, he died on the battlefield fighting Finnish marauders. The era of the semi-legendary monarchs represents something of a continuum, pulling the history of Curonia gradually out of the mists of the unwritten past and into an age with much better records and a more defined realm. It is notable for some very short reigns, and for the fact that none of the semi-legendary monarchs died entirely due to non-violent circumstances. Naula ruled for about a decade before her assassination, though we don't know the exact date of the start of her reign, and Ruta was only on the throne for barely more than 2 years before succumbing to an old wound. Zigna reigned for less than a decade before her own possible assassination, and Sargon just a bit more than a decade before his death in battle. Hukik's reign, famously, lasted just 9 months before he lost his fight with infection. And even the celebrated Tridenis reigned for fewer than 8 years before meeting his own end on the battlefield. On the 19th of July, 867, King Baisa took the throne, becoming the first of the fully historical Curonian monarchs. He is the latest ruler to be regarded as the kingdom's true founder, as few would argue that a strong central monarchy ruling from Grobano did not exist by the end of his reign. But the story of what he and his successors made from what their semi-legendary predecessors left them is for another time.